the weekly 30/30 trading list on the ASX. We're looking at the 30 strongest momentum companies over the quarter and this week's 30 best launchpad stocks. We're trying to find the best charts and the next companies to run and rally. Gary Glover is walking us through the charts that he's picked out from this week's list. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. How you going?
Well, the market has rallied. We've had some positive moves from the US last night. We've had a decent week on the ASX, and we've got a fair few companies that are roaring ahead. So I'm interested to see when you work through the momentum list, what you're finding.
Yeah, so lots of movement here, some big moves. Some of the dogs are barking as well. But yes, I mean, from the list there, obviously, a couple of things that sort of stood out to me this week was the buy now, pay later. They've gotten off the floor, and and gold. I think there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There was at least 7, maybe 8 stocks in the launchpad that were gold stocks that have sort of taken off here. So interesting there. So we haven't, gold hasn't had too much to smile at for a while. So I think it's only sort of popped into the launchpad, I think, once in the last 6 months or something. So so that's an interesting one as well. But let's go through the momentum. So looking at the sort of quarterly there, which one's the strongest? So obviously Zip number 1. So I think I sort of said last time, we saw a bit of volume there pop on here. Did make the list last week. Has gone on with it there. It's not one that I'm personally keen on there. I just think there's a lot of overhead resistance there. So it's going to face a bit of selling here every time I think a bit of a pop here might get knocked in the head. So so the rally's definitely surprised me, but the outside day here today doesn't surprise me. So but yeah, I think you'll just see plenty of chop here. So this makes it pretty hard to trade some of the stuff like, because you're sort of not really building there. I mean, you'd have to sort of drill into a half hourly to trade something like that. So just doesn't sort of give us a great technical setup there. Interesting as Silex, which has been number 1 the last 2 weeks, is faded number 2 now. So been there for a while, but amazing that it sort of hung on. Looking a little tired to me, but hey, as we know, some of these stocks, the strongest ones, they continue to sort of stay strong here. The other one that I saw, number 4 there, sort of Kogan, so sort of something a bit more on the larger scale there. So the only thing we sort of saw here was that obviously we did sort of flush to a new low after, not sure you'd sort of call this much of a bottoming process there, because it's sort of still sitting under the previous swing low. So that left it vulnerable to go to a new low, but obviously they're going to a new low and then not following through would have been interesting. And you started to see a bit of a climb, which would have been okay. But then probably this point here, you saw a little flag there, and then maybe breaking above here. So, the only really trigger I saw there, maybe, if you're watching this really closely, you might have seen it open up above here. That would have been a bit of a positive trigger. But yeah, because it's a pretty choppy market here. Look at this, big move here, but then big retracements as well. So definitely seeing some, stocks get going, but then they'll get whacked. They'll literally get whacked for 2 or 3 days and then come off as well. So that's often sort of the case in sort of more of a choppy sort of sideways markets. We sort of get the volatility. So sometimes when you're in a full-blown bull market, it's a lot more orderly. You sort of, you run, and then you go through a consolidation sideways, and then you pop again, and then consolidate, and then run. We're getting some pretty erratic moves here, so it just sort of indicates to us, it just sort of tells me we're sort of not out of the woods with this sort of market, because this type of behavior is sort of not really bull market trending behavior. It's sort of more range bound sort of here, but sometimes a base can take a while to build here. So, it could be base building, but still sort of still pretty early here. So what else is on here? Brainchip has had a bit of a pop again, but again, you're getting some pretty erratic moves, some big up and some big down moves in there. NEU is sort of one that let's just stay pretty firm here. So this is a pretty interesting one here, sort of this Neuren Pharmaceutical. So again, I think we talked about healthcare and biotech being one of the strongest sectors here. So look at that sort of, considering the state of the market, this has sort of gone up pretty strong. All that consolidation there, Chris, that's not a, that's just taken a lot of time here. I guess what we would have been seeing here is that obviously, rounding off here, not going too much, breaking up. I would have liked, breaking up above this sort of high here was the first sort of positive sign here, getting up to here, and then a little consolidation, and then another pop again as well. So not that it's a really good cup and handle there, but just the fact that this has been really resilient, again, showing relative strength in a market is a good sign. That little sideways consolidation there, not much volume there, just a bit more volume coming in here as well. So this is interesting here. It looks probably run too far now, but it's a sort of one for players here. If you start to see stocks that are pretty strong here, like we might have mentioned things like Treasury Wine the other day being strong as well. They're just, that relative strength there just leaves the stock in a strong position. So when the market does turn, they tend to go. So
just before you change on that one, when you're talking about relative strength, are you pointing at sort of that March, April, May period where it's slowly churned down sideways while the market was falling quickly? Is that what you're pointing to?
Yeah, so most stocks are going to new lows and making lower highs and different. So this thing here is just, it's stayed relatively robust. It's only had a mild decline. It's what I refer to as a corrective decline. So an impulsive decline is sort of when you're sort of, you're going down and leaving gaps, in the market, or each rally doesn't sort of come back up into the range. It's sort of leaves spacing there. But this is sort of just, just overlapping. This whole thing is just overlapping in nature. So it's a real struggle to sort of push this down here. Uses up plenty of time too, which is great. So, really doesn't sort of get below, doesn't take this sort of low out here. So, yeah, pretty constructive. Little false break down here, you might say as well. Just sort of went down for a retest, didn't been pushed through. Would have been seeing this thing. This stock's holding up incredibly well. Because obviously the low of the market was what, around the 21st, 22nd here. This was sort of holding up here pretty well. So it's just a good sort of tip for players there to sort of watch those stocks that are showing relative strength there. MP1, I think you mentioned this the other day. Obviously, once you get an upgrade, had a nice pop here. I was lucky to be long some of those. But yeah, once you get a bit of an upgrade there, you just tend to sort of, usually, as we know, Chris, historically, sort of you get, they continue to sort of usually sort of climbing sort of slowly after that initial jump. So if the stock has had a positive upgrade, so it'd be pretty rare for it to sort of have an upgrade and then come off. BTH is sort of one again in that sort of sector there. This is sort of interesting here. So it sort of reminds me of, I can see here this sort of had a low here, like a second higher low, third higher low, higher low, higher low. So this is sort of one thing we can look for there in markets as well. So obviously we're looking for a little bit of a pop out of the range, some volume to come in, looking for some consolidation, looking to break some sort of swing highs and stuff here. But one of the other patterns out, I remember Bill McLaren. I don't want to sort of go on too long here, but Bill McLaren, who's passed away, he was sort of, a bit of a mentor in terms of me learning charts and trends stuff there. He, used to teach lots of different patterns there, but I remember him talking about this 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern. That's basically just sort of seeing, your 0 is your low, your first high low is your 1, then your 2, then your 3. And if you get these sort of three high lows, that's when the market potentially can take off. And that avoids your little Elliott wave, your ABC, because then it means you've sort of got an extra wave. But I remember him telling a story about the 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern. He had a bloke that was sort of in one of his seminars, and he was a bit. He just noticed he knows this guy because he seemed pretty clueless, and after talking to him, really realized he didn't know much. And Bill went through all these different patterns, different trading, from pennants, flags, all sorts of stuff. And this guy sort of left, and he saw him a year later, and he said, "Oh mate," he was worried about him. So how did you go? And he said, 95% of the content you taught me went over my head. The only thing I remembered understood was 0, 1, 2, 3, looking for sort of 3 or 4 high lows in the market. So he said, so all I did for the year, I just traded that one pattern. So I went through the All Ordinaries. At that stage, it was the All Ordinaries Index. It's like 20 years ago now. And I just looked for that, 3 higher lows. And I just, every time I saw them, I'd buy them, use the last swing low as the stop. And that was, and he goes, "Oh, how did you go?" He goes, "Oh, I was up 47% for the year." And he goes, and Bill goes, "Oh shit, that was more than That was more than I made. Just trading that one pattern. So it's a really, so it just goes to show if you just focus on, like Minervini just trades the VCP pattern. He just trades that one pattern. He's a master of it. So, but this is an interesting pattern worth monitoring, because it does sort of, if you wait for that, 0, 1, 2, 3, then okay, here we go, start to break up. Then we can sort of follow that, if you start seeing the right ingredients. So it's just an interesting story, but it's also quite relevant in the current marketplace here. 360 had
0,
a nice
1, 2, 3.
had a nice little pop as well. I guess what I sort of saw here was that we saw a bit of volume come in, consolidation, another little pop, nice and tight here. And there's that, I love seeing these little tight consolidations here. This is sort of, this is sort of one of that, the formations we're spoken at there, just sort of going up to an old high, then congesting and popping there. So yeah, still looks sort of constructive. It's getting a bit late here now, but yeah, just interesting sort of watching these sort of things sort of develop here. Pointsbet was sort of one here that's interesting as well. So got a few higher lows building in there. Thing that sort of caught my eye was that volume, and then this volume, a bit of volume there, a bit of pullback, and then once we sort of broke through here, that was a pretty good signal. A little bit of tight congestion and a bit of a pop. We've had an update today, which has probably scared the market, because I know these guys like to spend a lot of money. Yeah, it's a little, it's come back here, but that's the sort of nature of this market at the moment. It's very choppy, seeing stuff sort of pile on quickly and then pile off just as fast.
And where are we? It's not even 11 o'clock, and that's a big volume candle for 9 hours of trade.
Yeah, so but I'm seeing this in a lot of stocks here. A lot of people are asking me about different moves and stuff here as well. So it is just a sort of choppy market. That's sort of why we're sort of not not out of the woods here yet. So but here's another little another low here, maybe a higher low, second higher low, third higher low, maybe starting to build here. So sometimes they can build here even on sort of light volume here. So yeah, that looks sort of somewhat constructive there. Bub was one that we've sort of followed for a while. That sort of held on here, but look how volatile this. The stocks are sort of firing up here and firing back here. So just the nature of the current market is just that's why probably just got to be, I think, sort of keeping your stops sort of nice and small and tight, and then your profit runs there and let them pop there, but don't have sort of these massive targets like you normally would. I think if you get your your 20% or your 30% move, or if you, for me, I'm a 3-for-1 trader. So if I'm say risking 3 or 4%, then I'm trying to make 9 or 12, or if I'm risking say 5%, I'm trying to make 15, or maybe I'll aim for a bit more if it looks like it can pop a bit more. So but we just probably just it's a very volatile sort of market here, getting lots of movement here. So that means, for me, usually means you got to bet smaller and give yourself a bit more wider, because obviously the swings are slightly larger. So but yeah, it's definitely an interesting market here. PNI is the last one here. Again, you got this little bit of a low here, bit of a 0, your 1, your 2, you got your 3. I mean, this thing just congested sideways on top of that previous high, which is perfect, and then she's popped here. So 8 to 10 is not a bad move, sort of 25%. So yeah, it's a really interesting pattern there, looking for that 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern, particularly in a market that's sort of building here a bit choppy. So that's our quarterly momentum stocks here. So looking at what has fired up this week here, obviously Kogan's had a nice move here. We talked about the pop there. That was number 1. Sezzle was number 2. Obviously had a big move here. Again, you just all that $1.50 back to $1 in a day. That's a pretty big swing. So not for the faint-hearted here. So again, this market's just telling you to bet small. Don't bet big here in this market here. It's very, very volatile. Temple Webster was actually one that I mentioned there a week or two ago, sort of to keep an eye on here. I just thought this was sort of a bit more, in terms of the growth stocks that have been beaten up, sort of one that I identified as being, a little bit better brand and company than some of the others. And didn't really give it too much there. I think we had a little false breakdown here, but the trend was pretty ugly. we really want to be sort of popping up here, a bit of a consolidation there. This is really only the first day that I saw, which made it interesting there, because we saw a little bit of volume break up through a little bit of a high there, maybe taking out this previous high here. But yeah, it didn't give it too many sort of signs there. So normally like to see it a bit more constructive, a bit more building to get involved in, but it is a pretty fast moving market here, so it's not always going to give you plenty of time to adjust here. Neometals looks pretty interesting. Again, we sort of got that, you can almost argue in here, Chris, we got that, the low, the 0, the 1, yeah, 0, 1, 2, 3, and then we start to build here. The volumes will be a bit tempered there, but look, the beauty is sort of, if you are sort of entering down here, your stops in here, you're not risking too much with this pattern. That's the beauty here with the 0, 1, 2, 3, and normally sort of your stop's pretty close. And if you get it right here, even if you're only getting a third right, and if you're making 4 or 5 times risk reward and you're only getting a third right, then that's a profitable strategy. So it's all about risk management and how you position in markets here.
You've highlighted a fair few charts that look like they've got those 0, 1, 2, 3.
yeah. There's a lot. Or just kind of made me just kind of, when I was looking through it, that's what I thought of. I thought of the old Bill McLaren. I thought of that story. It's just that story's always stuck in my head. So, but it's really hit home recently. Just thinking about the best traders that I've sort of seen in the last couple of years, their performance, they're generally very centered on trading a very small playbook, so they don't have lots of different strategies. They really only have a couple of strategies. Well, sometimes some of the best guys are only trading one strategy, one sort of setup, and they just trade that over and over again. As they just look for that, just relentless. So yeah, it's just something for maybe the viewers to sort of think about. If you're trading 10 or 20 different patterns, and maybe you're not really getting a hold of any of them, maybe you should just focus on maybe 3 or 5, maybe maximum, hone it down, and then start to see which 3 or 5 of the best, and then maybe you get it down to 3 of those 5 that hit it home for you. You can really tailor in and become quite good. KCN was sort of one that I thought was pretty interesting, potentially a VCP pattern here, yeah, obviously the gold sector is starting to move here. Gold's bounced from a really key technical zone, so there's quite a few gold stocks there. So BGL,
probably a good point to mention that earlier in the week you did talk about the gold stocks and them leading the market and being the area that you were looking for to be the next leaders, I should say.
Yeah.
So,
well, gold's sort of come back to a big level there. Was it 1670, whatever it is there? That's like on the weekly level. The stocks have all come back, and quite a few false breaks on some of the stocks. Like Silver Lake, I think Newcrest has come back to like a 3-year low as well. Northern Stars had a big move, some big volume come in as well. So there's just been a few of them that have really popped here. So definitely keep an eye on this, because obviously we talked about the 70s. In the 70s there, high inflationary periods, energy, number 1 sector for the decade. Number 2 was precious metals. So typically high inflation environments, gold does quite well. It hasn't done recently, which is it's gone against the grain of how it's behaved historically, but maybe that might change here. Aussie Broadband's had a nice little move there, little false break, and then climb out of here. You call this a little VCP pattern again, little congestion and pop here. Volume's a little light, a little hard to trade this one. Can't really get too much volume in there. But what else do we? So Gold Road, again, a nice little pop here, and another gold stock. Thanks, COB. There's another one there, some solid volume through there as well. That's had a nice little pop in there as well. AKE, another one in that metals space, has had a nice little pop there, not bad volume. Broken above the 50 now, broken above the previous swing high. So probably want to see this consolidate, see if it can build. Looks pretty interesting. So Barbara's had a bit of a pop as well. FCL, another one there, sort of building there. Maybe a little sedate here, a little bit light volume there. So that's probably less interesting to me, just because there's sort of not too much participation there and not very impulsive there. IOU was sort of probably one of the more interesting buy now pay later, just because they had good volume, deep retracement there, bit of light volume there. nice little move there, maybe a little tightening up and a little bit of a pop there, but it's not a sector I personally want to play in. I just think it's sort of yesterday's hero, but I could be wrong. The price actions, that's the most important thing. Don't try not to have too strong views in the marketplace, because sometimes it can change there. But that's mainly it. So yeah, there's obviously lots of gold in there, lots of buy now, pay later. I've chosen to sort of play the gold there. I think there's some pretty decent moves in there. Thinking about the gold, if you do get a bit of move in the gold, it could be, you've seen there with metals and minerals and stuff there. Once they get going, they can have big moves. So the last gold rally, sort of, I got set on a few positions and then got myself to break even, and then I got stopped out. That's just part of trading. But yeah, maybe this one's one that can, kick on and keep going here. So I've already sort of got a couple of my gold stocks already to break even or above. So got nothing to lose if it does pull back. So that's what we're hoping for. But yeah, interesting week there. Definitely just pretty volatile there. Some pretty big moves. Just be careful out there, because it's there's definitely a lot of volatility around. And for those that are sort of new to the game, I'd probably just be betting smaller than normal.
That's a good insight to end the week on, is looking at the possible new market leaders, which surfaced in your as golds in your Tuesday report, and they can click on the right hand side to see your Tuesday report, and then also an insight into trading and trading strategies and how they work, which is something that you're consistently sharing with us, which we're really grateful for, is insights into how many strategies to follow, when to use strategies, and keep on top of it. So thank you again, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.